Something is happening in Cleveland that nobody fully predicted at the start of this offseason. The Browns walked into OTAs with 4 quarterbacks on their roster and what looked like an open competition. But week by week, practice by practice, that competition has quietly stopped being a competition at all. One quarterback is rising fast, another is watching his spot disappear in real time, and the organization is already making moves behind the scenes that tell you everything you need to know about where this is all heading. This isn't about drama, this isn't about social media takes or fan speculation. This is about what's actually happening on the practice field, what coaches are saying behind closed doors, and what the latest reports from some of the most credible voices in NFL media are pointing toward. When you put it all together, the picture becomes very clear. Shadur Sanders is not just competing for a roster spot anymore, he's taking over. And Dillon Gabriel, he may be running out of time in Cleveland faster than anyone expected. Let's break down exactly how we got here, what the reports are saying, and what it all means for the Browns going forward. Not too long ago, Dillon Gabriel was being talked about as a genuine piece of Cleveland's future at the quarterback position. That might sound hard to believe now, given everything that's unfolded, but heading into the offseason, there were people inside and outside the organization who thought Gabriel had a legitimate shot at carving out a real role on this roster. He had NFL experience, he knew the system, he wasn't a liability. For a Browns team that has dealt with more quarterback chaos than almost any franchise in recent memory, having a young, capable backup felt like a reasonable foundation to build on. But football has a way of changing narratives very quickly, and the narrative around Dillon Gabriel has shifted dramatically. The conversation in Cleveland is no longer about how Gabriel fits into the offense or what role he could play in the regular season. Analysts, reporters, and insiders have moved past that entirely. The questions now are about which team Gabriel might end up with, what Cleveland could get back in a trade, and whether this offseason marks the end of his time with the Browns altogether. That's a stunning turn of events for a player who entered camp with legitimate optimism. But when you look at what's been happening at practice, it starts to make a lot more sense. The signs were there early, they just got impossible to ignore as the weeks went on. And the most damning sign of all? It came down to a single number: 3. In the NFL, practice reps are currency. They are not handed out randomly, they are not distributed based on seniority or contract size or what a player did last season. Coaches give reps to the players they trust, the players they're evaluating, and the players they see as part of the team's future. When a quarterback is getting meaningful work in 7-on-7 sessions and competitive team drills, it means the coaching staff is investing in him. When a quarterback stops getting those reps, it means something very different. During one OTA practice that reporters were permitted to observe, Dillon Gabriel received just 3 competitive reps in a 7-on-7 session. Not 3 drives, not 3 series, 3 individual reps while everyone else was getting real evaluation time. That number rippled through the league immediately. People who cover the Browns noticed it, analysts who track practice reports flagged it, and anyone who understands how NFL camps operate knew exactly what it meant. You don't accidentally give a quarterback 3 reps in a competitive period. That doesn't happen by chance or scheduling error. When a quarterback's rep count drops that dramatically, it reflects where he stands in the eyes of the coaching staff at that particular moment in time. One analyst put it bluntly, saying that he wasn't focused on big throws or highlight moments, he was looking at who's in the front line and who's in the huddle, and what he saw told him more than any stat line could. Reps equal trust in the NFL, and right now, Gabriel isn't getting the reps. But here's where it gets even more complicated, because it's not just about Gabriel losing ground, it's about who's been gaining it at an alarming rate.
Adam Schefter dropped a detail recently that immediately changed the way people were looking at the Browns' quarterback room. According to Schefter, Cleveland is not anticipated to carry 4 quarterbacks on their roster heading into the regular season. That one sentence, coming from one of the most connected reporters in the NFL, did more to clarify the situation than weeks of beat reporter updates. If the Browns aren't keeping 4 quarterbacks, somebody has to go. And when you look at the roster and think about who's staying and who's expendable, the math becomes brutally straightforward. Deshaun Watson is still on the roster. Like him or not, agree with the decision or not, Watson has a contract that makes him nearly impossible to simply cut without an enormous financial penalty. His presence on this team is a given for now, regardless of how complicated that situation continues to be. Watson isn't going anywhere in the short term, and the organization has acknowledged as much, even as they've been careful about how they discuss his role. Shadur Sanders is the rookie who, according to every credible report coming out of OTAs, has been one of the most impressive players in camp. More on that in a moment. But his trajectory is clearly upward, and the coaching staff has publicly recognized his development in ways that coaches rarely do with rookie quarterbacks this early in the process. Trey Green is viewed as a developmental player with long-term potential. He's not a finished product, but the Browns seem interested in keeping him around as a project. That leaves Dillon Gabriel fighting for what now looks like the last spot on a four-man depth chart that the team has already signaled they don't intend to keep at 4. The numbers don't lie, and according to sources cited by multiple reporters, the Browns have already started having conversations about potential options that could send Gabriel to another organization before the season begins. Nothing is finalized, no deal has been announced, but in the NFL, when a team starts those conversations, it rarely means they're planning to keep the player. The writing tends to appear on the wall long before the official announcement does. Here's what makes this story so compelling. Shadur Sanders didn't force his way into the conversation by making noise. He didn't push back publicly. He didn't campaign for reps or talk to the media about deserving more opportunities. He just kept working, and the results have been undeniable. Todd Monken, the Browns' offensive coordinator, has commended Sanders' development in terms that are genuinely unusual for a coach talking about a rookie quarterback during the offseason. Coaches are typically measured and cautious with their praise at this stage. They don't want to create expectations they can't meet. They don't want to hand a young player a crown before he's earned it on the field in real game conditions. But Monken has been notably candid about what he's seen from Sanders, stating that he has advanced significantly from earlier off-season workouts and that his growth has been real and consistent. That's not nothing. That's a coordinator telling you in as direct a way as coaches allow themselves to speak publicly that this kid is ahead of schedule. Mary Kay Cabot, one of the most respected Browns reporters in the business, added important context to those comments. According to her reporting, Sanders has grown noticeably more comfortable with Cleveland's offensive scheme. He's more proficient with the playbook. His timing has improved. His decision-making has gotten sharper. And all of that has happened in a compressed window of time that suggests his development curve is steeper than most rookie quarterbacks experience. Each of those factors matters independently. Put them together and they paint the picture of a quarterback who is rapidly convincing the people who matter most that he belongs. Coaches don't just hand out trust. They observe, they evaluate, and they eventually make decisions about who gets opportunities based on what they see every single day. When Sanders is the one getting commended for his work ethic, his football IQ, and his growth within the system, that tells you where the trust is being directed. And in the NFL, trust flows in one direction. Once a coaching staff starts believing in a quarterback, the momentum builds quickly. More reps lead to more confidence. More confidence leads to better performance. Better performance leads to more trust. It's a cycle that once it starts is very hard to stop. Sanders appears to be fully inside that cycle right now. The coaches believe in him, the reps are reflecting that belief, and the trajectory is pointing only upward.
Meanwhile, the player who entered this offseason with what seemed like a more established foothold on the roster is watching from the outside of that cycle, and that's where things get a little more layered. There's a moment from last preseason that a lot of Browns fans have been circling back to recently, and it's worth addressing because it adds an interesting layer to everything that's unfolded since. During a television interview ahead of the preseason, Dillon Gabriel made comments about the distinction between competitors and entertainers. The framing was general enough that Gabriel later clarified he was speaking about media narratives and not directing his words at any specific teammate, but a significant portion of Browns fans and observers interpreted those comments as a subtle shot at Shedeur Sanders, who at the time was already generating significant attention as a high-profile rookie with a famous father and a built-in media following.
Whether that interpretation is fair or not is almost beside the point now. What matters is how the situation has evolved since those words were spoken. Shedeur didn't fire back. He didn't address it in press conferences or on social media. He didn't make it a storyline. He absorbed whatever was being said, kept his head down, and focused entirely on what he could control on the practice field. Fast forward to today, and it's Shedeur who's being praised by coaches for his work ethic and competitive drive. It's Shedeur whose preparation and attention to detail are being highlighted in practice reports. It's Shedeur who's getting the reps, earning the trust, and building the kind of momentum that could define his career. The player who was framed as an entertainer by implication is the one the organization is quietly building around, and the player who drew that distinction is the one whose future in Cleveland is now in genuine doubt. There's a certain kind of irony in that arc that even the most casual observer can appreciate. Football has a way of answering those questions more definitively than any interview ever could, and right now the field is doing all the talking. But the question that still lingers for a lot of people is what actually happens next, and more specifically, what does a Dillon Gabriel trade even look like? Let's be real about something. If the Browns do move Dillon Gabriel before the season, they're not going to be fielding calls from teams offering first-round picks or blue-chip prospects in return. That's not how the quarterback trade market works for young players who haven't yet established themselves as clear starters at the NFL level. The return Cleveland could expect for Gabriel, according to several analysts who have weighed in on the situation, would likely be in the range of a late-round future draft pick, maybe a conditional pick depending on how Gabriel performs with his new team, but nothing that would dramatically reshape the Browns' draft capital. That might sound underwhelming for a player the organization once had genuine optimism about, but it doesn't represent poorly on Gabriel's ability or his potential. It reflects the reality of how teams value quarterback depth across the league. Young quarterbacks who are in their second or third NFL seasons, who haven't had significant starting experience, and who are being moved off a roster are rarely going to generate huge trade returns regardless of their talent level. The market simply doesn't support those kinds of prices. What Gabriel would offer a new team, though, is real value in the right context. He has NFL experience. He understands professional offensive systems. He has gone through the rigors of training camp and preseason competition at the highest level. For a team that loses a quarterback to injury mid-season and needs someone who can step in and function in a real offense, Gabriel could absolutely be a viable option. Every season, without exception, teams find themselves scrambling for quarterback depth once the injuries start piling up. Gabriel has the profile to be an attractive option in that kind of scenario. So while a trade might feel like a disappointing outcome for a player who came into this offseason with real hope, it doesn't necessarily represent the end of his NFL career. It just represents a change of scenery and a new opportunity somewhere else. The league is full of quarterbacks who bounced around before finding the right situation, and Gabriel is young enough that his story is far from over. But for the Browns, this decision isn't really about Gabriel's future elsewhere, it's about what they're building in Cleveland. And what they're building, based on everything we've seen and heard this offseason, appears to be centered squarely around Shadur Sanders.
The Browns have been searching for stability at the quarterback position for what feels like an eternity. The franchise has cycled through quarterbacks with a frequency that has become almost a punchline in NFL circles. Every year there's a new plan, every year there's a new face under center, every year there's a reason why last year's guy didn't work out and this year's guy is different. It has been exhausting for a fan base that just wants to believe in someone. That's what makes the Shadur Sanders story genuinely significant beyond the day-to-day drama of training camp roster battles. If the reports are accurate, and if the momentum he's built through OTAs carries over into preseason and beyond, Sanders could represent something the Browns haven't had in a very long time. A quarterback the organization actually believes in. A quarterback the coaching staff is willing to invest in. A quarterback whose trajectory is pointing in the right direction at exactly the right time. Todd Monken has been seen alternating Sanders with Deshaun Watson in competitive periods, which is notable in itself. You don't give a rookie that kind of positioning against a veteran on your roster unless you're seriously evaluating him as a potential centerpiece. The fact that Sanders is holding his own, and by several accounts outperforming expectations in those settings, says a great deal about where things stand. There's also something to be said about the organizational psychology at play here. When a coaching staff starts to build momentum around a young player, it shifts the entire culture of the quarterback room. Other players adjust their expectations. Scouts and front office personnel start to align their thinking around that player's future. Draft decisions, free agency targeting, and scheme decisions all start to reflect the belief that this particular quarterback is the one being built around. Cleveland appears to be entering that phase with Sanders, and once an organization reaches that point, it becomes very difficult to reverse course. That doesn't mean everything is guaranteed. Football is unpredictable, and the preseason hasn't even started yet. Sanders will face real defensive looks. He'll face pressure situations and tough reads, and moments where his inexperience will be visible. Every rookie quarterback goes through growing pains regardless of how good their OTA reports look. The real test comes when the lights are on and the games count. But the foundation being laid right now, it looks different than what Cleveland has put together in previous years. The coaches are talking differently. The practice reports are reading differently. The organization's confidence, based on what insiders are describing, feels more genuine than the manufactured optimism that has sometimes surrounded new quarterbacks in Cleveland in recent memory. Something real appears to be happening, and it's happening faster than almost anyone anticipated. Dillon Gabriel walked into this offseason thinking he had a genuine chance to make a name for himself in Cleveland. He had reasons to be optimistic. He had experience. He had familiarity with the system. He had the kind of background that makes a young quarterback a credible backup option in the NFL. But football doesn't reward expectation. It rewards performance. And in the competition for trust, reps, and ultimately roster spots, Gabriel has found himself on the wrong side of a rapidly shifting equation. Shadur Sanders, meanwhile, has quietly done exactly what the best young quarterbacks do when given an opportunity. He has worked, he has improved, he has earned the confidence of the people who matter most. He hasn't made it about anything other than football, and the results are speaking in a language that the entire league is now paying attention to. The Browns are facing real decisions in the weeks ahead. Roster cuts will come, the preseason will begin, the depth chart will take its final shape before the regular season kicks off. And when all of that shakes out, it's becoming increasingly clear that Cleveland's future at quarterback might already have a name attached to it. Sanders didn't just show up and demand a spot. He came in, did the work, earned the trust, and let the reports do the talking for him. And right now, those reports are telling a story that the entire league is watching unfold in real time. Cleveland's quarterback era might be changing, and if the offseason is any indication, it's changing right now.